Welcome back, guys. Lonestar Patriot here. Thanks for joining me. So it's been a little while since I've done an EDC flashlight review, and so I'm excited to bring you another review today on a light that I'm a big fan of, and that's going to be this guy. It's the Streamlight ProTac 2L-X light. Now this puts out 500 lumens on the high setting, and so what we'll do is we'll jump inside, we'll take a look at some of the unique features on this light and discuss some of the specifications. I'll also roll in some of the footage I took at night to show you a beam comparison, not only with this light, but other EDC lights that I carry. And then finally, we'll wrap it up discussing a couple disadvantages, at least that I see, as well as a bunch of advantages. So let's get started. Okay, so to take a close look at the Streamlight ProTac 2L-X light you see in front of you. So let's first talk about the construction of this light. So it is made from an all aluminum body, and it does have a anodized finish that of course is in the black color. Now this is the same anodized finish that we're used to seeing for all the aluminum body lights from Streamlight, and to date no issues with the finish in terms of durability, so far so good. Now in terms of the overall length, so it measures just over 5 inches, approximately 5 1/8 inches long, and that's from the end of the bezel to the end of the tail cap. Now in terms of weight, in fact before we talk about weight, I want to mention that this does come from Streamlight with two CR123A batteries. So according to Streamlight, with those same CR123 batteries, which is what I have installed in the light currently, it weighs 3.9 ounces. Now on my scale, it comes in a little bit lighter at approximately 3.73 ounces, so roughly a couple tenths of an ounce lighter. So again, just something to point out. Now the good news is that this can also be used with one 18650 battery. Now if you decide to go that route, that actually increases the weight of this by about half an ounce to an overall weight of about 4.4 ounces. But overall, a very lightweight light. Now in terms of the pocket clip, so the good news is that this light can be carried in either the bezel up or bezel down orientation, depending on your preference. Now my preference is to carry this in a bezel down position. Now if we look at that first, the reason why I prefer the bezel down position, aside from of course withdrawing say the light from a pocket, is that you have basically no projection of this light outside of a pocket. So the clip actually extends almost to the end of the tail cap. I'd say approximately about an 1/8 inch beyond the clip to the end of the tail cap. So very little projection. Now compare that to say, if you carry this in the bezel up position, you can see that the clip actually terminates right before the flared section of the bezel to where you have just shy of about 2 inches of potential projection of the light outside of say a pocket. So again, something to keep in mind if that's your desired carry position. Now speaking of the bezel, it does have a crenulated bezel. Now it's not an overly aggressive crenulated bezel, however I do find that it is adequate for say use as a self-defense tool, and at the same time it's not overly aggressive to where it's going to dig up or tear up say a pocket. Now moving on to one of the primary advantages of this light, and that's going to be the high output of 500 lumens. So according to Streamlight, again based on the use of the CR123 batteries, the runtime at the high output setting of 500 lumens is 2 hours and 45 minutes. Now, if you use, say, one 18650 battery, you get about 30 minutes longer runtime out of that battery compared to the CR123 batteries at about 3 hours and 15 minutes. Now, a lot of times I find that the actual run times from light manufacturers are generous, so a lot of times I'll divide them by 2. But again, it gives you some frame of reference in terms of the overall runtime based on the high output setting. Now, moving on to the low setting. So the low setting on this light puts out 40 lumens. Now the good news about this is that regardless of the type of battery used, so again whether it be the CR123A batteries or the 18650, the runtime is actually the same at approximately 30 hours. Again, divide that by 2, but you have still a lot of time in terms of runtime on that low setting. Now one of the other nice features about this Streamlight light, and that's what they're known for as well, is that this does incorporate their 10-tap technology. So as it stands from the factory, the setting or the settings on this light in terms of the number of presses on the tail cap is set up to where you have the first press of the tail cap is the high setting, the second press of the tail cap is on the strobe setting, and the third press on the tail cap is going to be the low setting. So again, that's the default from Streamlight. Now the good news is that you can set this up based on your desired preference. So the second option is to do just a high only. Now I know some of you guys out there prefer just a high only light setting, so that's certainly a feature that you can set. And then the third option is going to be to do a low as your first press of the tail cap, followed by a high setting as a second press of the tail cap. So again, you have a lot of versatility to set this light up as you see fit. Okay, so I went ahead and removed the tail cap to discuss and show you guys the batteries that it comes with, as well as a couple features on this tail cap. So as I mentioned earlier, it does come with these two Streamlight branded CR123A batteries. Now, of course, any brand of CR123A battery will work. And at the same time, as I mentioned earlier, you can swap out these two CR123A batteries with one 18650 based on your preferences. Now, moving on to the tail cap. So a couple features here that I want to be sure to point out. So the first feature is obviously that this light is IPX7 rated, which means that it is waterproof for up to 1 meter for approximately 30 minutes. Now that waterproof rating is achieved by this red O-ring seal. So you want to be sure that always this tail cap is engaged tightly against the body to prevent any water from, of course, getting inside the battery compartment and ruining the internals of the light. So what I recommend is just periodically checking this O-ring seal, especially if it is outside in the inclement weather, to be sure that, say, the seal isn't dry rotting or cracking, and also keep this lubricated, again, to maintain that IPX7 rating. Now, another thing I want to mention is that this might not come across on camera very well, but I'll try to roll in some pictures here at the end. But the actual push button itself sits basically flush with the end of the tail cap. Now, while some of you might prefer this, it's just a feature that I want to point out because I typically like a little bit more projection of the push button, just a slight amount beyond the tail cap. I feel that I have a better engagement capability with that projection versus it being flush. Now, obviously you don't want to have it too far of a projection, given that you can have accidental discharge, say inside of a pocket, but I find that I like it a little bit beyond where it is here. All right, guys, so right up to the video covering the Streamlight ProTac 2L-X light. Now, what I want to do is discuss a couple of disadvantages that I see, as well as a bunch of advantages to the use of this light as an EDC flashlight. So if we start with the disadvantages first, there's really two disadvantages that I see, at least in my opinion, which are related to the tail cap. So if we look at the tail cap, now this particular tail cap sits basically flush with the body. Now, while some may actually prefer this in this case, I typically like the tail cap to sit just a little bit proud of the body. That way I've got a good feel in the hand to know that I can easily depress this light when I need to engage it. Now, the second thing is actually related to the tail cap as well, and that is the spring. So to me, the spring is just a little bit light. I prefer a stiffer spring. Again, that way I have a better tactile feel and to know that I've actually depressed this light to obviously engage it. So with those out of the way, let's move on to the advantages. So there's several advantages that I see. Obviously, the first one is going to be the Streamlight name. So obviously with the Streamlight name behind it, you know that it's going to be high quality. It's a very proven light. Now, the second thing is going to be the versatility of the light. So you've got several different settings that we discussed. You have the high setting, the low setting, as well as the strobe setting. So for example, on the high setting, it's certainly a self-defense tool given that you have 500 lumens in the case you needed to blind somebody. That can also be used, say, for searching. Now on the low setting, there's a lot of utility usage for that. So obviously that's dependent upon your use, but again, say from anything from reading or a camp light or anything such as that, you have that to use as well. Now the third one being the strobe light, that can be used for signaling if you needed it, or as well as a self-defense light, again, to blind somebody. So the third thing is going to be that it fits in the hand well. That's a big thing for me for a self-defense light or an EDC light, is that it fits in the hand well. And I feel like this fits my hand very well. I like the diameter of this body. In fact, the diameter is basically the same over the entire length of the light, and it just fits well in the hand. It's got a good dexterity and a good tactile feel, especially if I needed to use it as a strike tool. It doesn't feel like it's going to come out of the hand easily. Now, the last thing is going to be the price point. So this particular light comes in typically about 50 bucks. A lot of times you can find it just a little bit cheaper, but for $50, I think that's a heck of a light, given the features that you have, the advantages that you have on this light, as well as, of course, the name of the Streamlight brand behind it. So maybe you've considered buying this light, but hopefully you found the video helpful. But as always, thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, and keep it a good fight. First start with the construction of this light. So it is made from an aluminum. Moving on to the tail cap. So the first thing is that the good news is that this light to protrude just a tad beyond the body to give me a bore. Alright guys, so right through the video covering the Streamlight ProTac 2L-X light. Now what I'm doing next is but hopefully you found the video helpful. But thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing. So this is the primary purpose, is going to be a self-defense light as an EDC tool. So, I'll drop it.